Hey everybody, welcome to the Private Club Radio Show, where we give you the scoop on all things private golf and country clubs, from mastering leadership and management, food and beverage excellence, member engagement secrets, board governance, and everything in between, all while keeping it fun and light. Whether you're a club veteran just getting your feet wet or somewhere in the middle, you are in the right place. I'm your host, Denny Corby. Welcome to the show. In this episode, I am chatting with Ed Chapman, who is the CEO of the Royal Auckland and Grange Golf Club in Auckland, New Zealand. And we're talking about what it takes to lead private clubs across the globe while navigating cultural differences, building high-performing teams, and respecting traditions. This is a fantastic episode because Ed shares his fascinating career journey, which has taken him from the UK to Dubai, Hong Kong, and now New Zealand. And all along the way, he has tackled challenges like managing diverse teams, preserving club traditions, and learning to adapt new cultures with curiosities and openness. And this is just a excellent, excellent, excellent episode. We had a fantastic conversation that I cannot wait for you to listen to. So many nuggets, so much information, and the conversation just never died. It was just so good. And I actually got a lot of great takeaways from it, including a book that he recommended that I am listening to right now called The Art of Possibility. It's just so good. I am super excited for this episode. I cannot wait for us to dive in. Before we do, big thanks to some of our show partners, Concert Golf Partners, Golf Life Navigators, and Kenneth Member Vetting. Going to hear about them a little bit more later on in the episode, as well as myself, Denny Corby, the Denny Corby Experience. Magic, mind reading, and comedy. There's excitement, there's mystery, also there's magic. One of the most fun member event nights your club can have, guaranteed. If you want to learn more, head on over to dennycorby.com. Enough about that. Let's get to the episode, everybody. Let's welcome to the show, all the way from Auckland, New Zealand. Let's welcome Ed Chapman. You've had quite a pretty cool career traveling all over the world.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate. Yeah.
UK, Dubai, Hong Kong. Now you're in New Zealand. Where are you originally from?
Yeah, from the UK, from a small town north of London. Yeah.
How'd you get into clubs?
So I used to coach football or soccer as a teenager, and really enjoyed coaching, being with people. And they had a coaches golf day. Most of them were like once a year golfers, and I was the only person who didn't play any golf. So I thought, be fun. Why not give that a go? I'm pretty sporty. The ball's not even moving. How hard can that be? So I picked up some cheap clubs, went to the range a few times, could hit the ball, went out and played, made one par, which I can still really vividly remember. And I was like, this game's awesome. And that got my love affair with golf going, which then led me to want to coach golf, partly because A, I liked coaching, and B, my first coach was quite inspiration to me.
Yeah.
So then, got working in golf clubs, and then just it's morphed from there into now being the CEO of Royal Auckland and Grange.
Yeah. When you first left the UK for Dubai in 2011, did you picture like this career path, or has it been more of a one thing led to another?
One thing led to another. If you'd asked me, even when I left Dubai and went to Hong Kong, would I want to be the GM of a golf club? Hell no. Would have been my answer. I've been like, that looks like the most boring job. What you do is sit in an office doing paperwork, because that's what I'd seen.
Yeah.
And then it kind of morphed into realizing I love coaching, not specifically coaching people to be better at hitting a golf ball, but just coaching people to be better. So as a mentor and a leader, I get to do that still, and I really enjoy that side of it. So that's kind of helped. I realized, what was my enjoyment side of the coaching, into then seeing actually what a GM does, which is, I think from the outside, you don't get to necessarily see that until you start getting into that world, or whether it's listening to podcasts of GMs to sort of get a bit more of an insight. That's such an interesting side of the industry because it's so multifaceted. Yeah. You get to experience every part of the industry, of clubs, F&B and agronomy. That it's then such a fascinating role, but I would never would have thought, and I certainly never would have thought, although I really wanted to move to Dubai, that was my first choice of where I wanted to go, and I wanted to go overseas, to then end up in Hong Kong at Hong Kong Golf Club. I mean, probably one of the biggest clubs in the world. You've got 318s and then a 9-hole course at the City Clubhouse. Sort of 7,500 members. It's a huge place. And then to end up down here, yeah, never would have thought that for sure.
Yeah, what's been some of like the biggest culture shocks moving between all these different countries? Were there any moments that made you really stop and go, well, that's different?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always joke with people when they do move overseas that in the first 6 months of moving, you're going to have a lot of WTF moments. Whether that's like, what have I done? Why have I come here? You have a lot of those. I think in Dubai, you go to the Middle East, especially I was in my mid-20s, and you kind of, what you hear or read or get told about it is it's very closed. There's no drinking. It's but it's not like that at all. Lots of the locals drink. It's which it shouldn't be surprising because just because there's a religion and it says you should do this doesn't actually mean that's what everybody follows and does, even if they are still passionate about it. So that was probably a bit of a shock where you kind of not expecting that side of it at all, but there is. In had one of our members who I coached was a local. He took me out on his boat and he's picked me up in his car to go down there at 6 a.m. in the morning. And he's like, oh, pass me a beer from the back. So he's drinking. He's driving 140 kilometers an hour. So what's that, like 90 miles an hour, right up into the bumper of the car in front on the 6-lane freeway. And I said to him, I was like, are you not worried, A, about killing us, but B, about getting like pulled over? He's like, oh, no problem. My cousin Ahmed will sort us out. I'm like, well, you have to give me a bit more information than that. He's like, oh, he's the chief of Dubai traffic police. So that's who's in the car with us.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, he turns to him and says, oh, Ed. He goes, oh, Ed is a good person. You look after him. And this guy turns around, gives me his business card and says, oh, you have traffic problem? You ring me? No problem. So there's things like that. You're just like, oh, okay. You kind of hear stories like this is how it works, but then you actually really experience it and you're like, oh, okay, wow, this is quite different. And then in Hong Kong, it's a bizarre place. You have this obviously real high end side to it, and then you have the more basic way of life where I've been following people. They have these like trolleys they use for putting their shopping in. Yeah. So there's a couple of like pigs trotters sticking out the bottom of it from their shopping. So there's stuff like that just gets really normal. But then there's other things you don't expect. When I spent some time back in the UK, it was and same here still. I find it actually really weird to be able to understand all the conversations going on around me. Because in Dubai, there's so many languages being spoken. And in Hong Kong, majority it's local, so they're not speaking English when they're together. So I found it initially actually really overwhelming to be able to understand all these conversations going on around me versus it just being kind of white noise in the background. So I found probably reverse culture shock, probably more of a hard thing to deal with when I spent about a year back in the UK in 2022, I think it was. That I found actually harder adjusting back to that life and that way of thinking because that hasn't changed really since I left, but I've changed a lot.
Yeah.
So that I found quite actually more of a challenge.
Have you found, how do I want to phrase it? Like I feel like you'd have to you have to be more in tune with like, because even though you might not be able to understand, but more like the body language, like the vibes, the feels, like just like people's, how they're standing, like they're like the tone, well, even tone, because isn't that very important in like Hong Kong, like the same word, just like how it's if it's an upwards or downwards, it can mean like something really good or really bad. But I feel like you'd have to be able to like really like be able to have that sixth sense almost of like picking up on like the feel and the vibe and the tone and some of that stuff.
Massively, yeah. And I think it does really help you as a communicator and understanding people because I occasionally would say at the club, say to someone, oh, are you talking about X? And they'd be like, oh, you can understand Cantonese? I'm like, well, no, but that where you're talking, the way you're gesturing, your body language, and how you're speaking would lead me to think you're talking about this thing. And often it'd be right. And as you say, you get this kind of hyper awareness of body language and tone, and because you can't understand, then you learn enough to pick up the odd word, which then goes, okay, yeah, they are definitely talking about this thing, even if you can't understand them. So you do get much more attuned to that, which I think helps in general then with your communication and empathy.
What was it like being the outsider in all of these places?
Yeah, it was certainly in Dubai. It was really made you kind of go take a step back, and you get kind of taught through society. I think whether that's movies, etc., that coming from being white and from Western Europe, that's kind of like makes you, don't know what the right word is, but like you're the hero in the movie, right? That
Yeah.
tends to be what it is. You feel like, oh, I'm should be at the top, and it's just like this subconscious thing I think people have. And then we get there and we've got our frontline staff who aren't paid a lot. Maybe they're from Bangladesh or Philippines, and they speak like 4 languages. And you're like, it's really humbling to suddenly go, actually, these people, yet they're lowly paid and they're seen as low skilled workers, but actually they've got this amazing skill set that I don't have, of being able to understand and speak lots of other languages, which has enabled them to be able to come here and work. And I think it's easy just to kind of float through the world going, oh, sweet, I speak English and that gets me through most places, which it does. So that I think something which made me feel not as a bit of an outsider, but they're so welcoming. People who have the least often give the most, I found. And when I first got to Dubai, I had quite, I say, crippling homesickness, which I wasn't expecting. I'd lived together with my partner for 6 years. I moved out by myself because she was going to come out 6 months later once we had had our wedding, which was already booked. And it was really hard. And a lot of, sure, my peer group, but also our frontline workers from different countries really welcomed me into kind of their group as well, which was made you feel incredibly welcome to do that, and something I've kind of tried to do myself as well. But I think being on the outside, it just makes you, gives you a whole different view on the world, and that's what I think I struggled with that reverse culture shock back in the UK. Everything's a bit closed-minded and looked at a certain way, whereas when you go and experience different cultures, whether that's through travel or work, it just makes you a lot more open and understanding that there's lots of different ways to look at the world. But ultimately, we're all people who just kind of want to be happy and have your healthy family, and you kind of all striving for the same thing, even if you're from the most diverse backgrounds.
Yeah. So kind of along that same token, have there been right? Because you've been, some very prestigious clubs all over the world. Have you found any maybe like one or two universal truths about managing private golf and country clubs, no matter where they're located in the world?
Yeah, people just want to be, people want to know you care, especially as you get more senior in the management roles. Like here, we've got members who are multi generational. My conversations with some of them when I've been with them or been playing golf with them is, what they really want to know is, do I care and am I passionate about the club? Because they are massively so. That's almost their number one thing. They assume I'm in the job because I know what I'm doing. Therefore, that side of it, they don't really seem to be that interested in or bothered about, because they'll appreciate the committee's done their due diligence to employ someone who knows what they're doing. They just want to know, do you really care about them and the club and the heritage and their future to it? I think that's something which comes across at all clubs I've been at.
Yeah.
And then both members and staff just want to feel seen and heard. I saw a good quote yesterday came up, which was um, along the lines of, the most generous gift you can give anybody is your undivided attention. And I think in this world where we have Apple Watches, where you get a notification and you just glance down at it mid conversation or while they're talking, it's incredibly rude. And not to say that I don't do it, because it's this reflex reaction that we've trained ourselves, or we've been trained by companies to do, which I would, I'm sure, if I was in their shoes as well, want people to do that. But giving someone your true undivided attention, I think that's something which staff, members all over the world, if you can do that, that's really what everyone wants.
Have you found different cultures take to that differently?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So in generally speaking, like Hong Kong, it's a much more differential society. So I would always start with Mr. So and so. if I first meet them, and wait for them to maybe give me their first name.
Mhm.
And then it's that if you actually making eye contact, being quite like you would say in the US, that can be seen as a bit less differential. So you'd actually want to be a little bit more, say, submissive on that side initially to build that relationship with that. So how you go about it can be different. How you make people feel seen and heard, because again, in not every culture do they appreciate small talk. Sometimes that's not
Oh.
necessary. Yeah, and generally, not all of Asia, but a lot of it, it's quite a fast-paced society, and the whole small talk thing. Just want to get stuff done in a nice, efficient manner. And you're sure there's a time and a place for it, but most of the time, not. So it's then understanding what is important for them, because again, that's showing that you've seen and heard them or their culture more, that you're able to kind of morph into what's appropriate.
Now, is that something that you were told? Did you pick up on it? Was it in your own research, a mixture of all the above?
Yeah, all the above. So a bit of research, which having done lots of research before I moved to Dubai, and then I got there and found out the reality, told me actually the most of that research was obviously written by people who had never been or lived there. So then it's a case of living it and just asking people as well, asking questions. Try and live from a place of curiosity. It gets you through most situations. It gets you past anger and frustration if you're just curious as to why is this thing done like that? Why have they not and spoken in this manner? Like, why is it different? I think if you approach that, you get to understand a lot quicker, and not assuming that just because the way I've been brought up to do something doesn't mean it's actually the right way. It just means it's the cultural norm in that place. Doesn't mean it's the same in talking to someone from Iran or China or Chile, wherever it might be. And even simple things like, you do my research moving to Dubai, it's quite clear you shouldn't ever like shake hands of a woman from there, because it's not meant to be a done thing.
Yeah.
But actually, often they'll put their hand out to shake yours. You shouldn't initiate it. You want to give them the space and the comfort that if they're comfortable, they'll do it, and then you accept it. So it's just little things like that, understanding actually the reality of how the places work.
Yeah. How big were your teams at these different clubs all over the world? I'm assuming big, small. What was the range like?
Yeah, everything. So in Hong Kong, there was a director of golf and myself. So ultimately, he was accountable for the whole department. But we had 15 PGA professionals, and then around, including the full time coaches, and then anywhere between sort of 70 to 80 golf operations staff. And then the whole club was about 450. And then where I am now, we've got a full team of about 60 across all departments, which really quite a bigger club for New Zealand.
Yeah.
And then Dubai, we had been sort of 100 odd at the club or so. But that was part of a hotel. Intercontinental Hotels managed the club, and they had three hotels that had joined it. So we had 1,200 staff, including the hotels, with something like 150 different nationalities working there, which was certainly pretty interesting. And then back in the UK, you're really typical, very small club with sort of 20 staff and like four of us in the golf team.
What's the I don't want to say the secret, but what's the secret to leading such diverse groups effectively, large, small, and just diverse in the people?
I think for me, I'd come back to curiosity and genuinely caring and being interested in people. Now, with a team of sort of 70, 80 in Hong Kong, and not all of them had English names. So quite often in Hong Kong, China, they won't have a legal English name, but they'll kind of just choose one
Yeah.
to make life simpler for them and other people communicating. But not all of them did, so it could be quite hard to get all the names right. But they didn't really seem to be bothered, as long as you showed a genuine interest when you talk to them. And again, it comes back to the undivided attention. You're making them feel like the only person you're interested in talking to. You're not looking out for either a member or someone more important to speak to. You're just giving them your undivided attention, that you show that you care. And if you do that, they'll do their best job because they know they're looked after. So then you don't have to try and manage all these people. They're going to do it the right thing, do the best job that they can because they know that you care.
Did you find it difficult at all? Because clubs are, steeped in tradition often, and if you're coming in from the outside, from a whole different country, how do you decide when to embrace change versus kind of sticking with the classics, and how did you manage that?
Yeah, I think it's understanding why things are done how they're done. It's really easy to come in and go, well, that's ridiculous. That's not efficient, or it could be done quicker, or we could do the same outcome cheaper. But it's finding out what's the underlying reason why something's done like that, and then what can and can't be changed. What should just be left? What's a sacred cow? What you really shouldn't touch and shouldn't change, even though you could make it better, and understanding the history behind things. So we have an event here which is really popular with the members. It's probably one of the biggest event for the men, and that had been changed a few years ago to being a shotgun start because it was operationally more efficient and allowed more members not involved in the event to play, and the members hated it because it wasn't the tradition of the event. Tradition of the event was a 1-tee start through the whole day with a starter. Those of you with families can play early, go home, see the families, then come back for the dinner. And just by reinstating that, that suddenly got a huge number of people just on board because you've gone back to the roots and the tradition of that event, even though it's probably slightly less efficient than it could be. But that's not always the goal. So it's just taking your time, I think, and speaking to people again.
Yeah. And now, was that something that you changed and then changed back, or was that changed before you came and then you were there, you had your feet on the ground, you were listening, and you were like, "Hey guys,
Mm.
let's bring it back."
Exactly, yes. It'd already been changed. I don't know for how long
Yeah.
exactly before I got here. And then my first year here, when we were organising that event, a few of the members who were really passionate about it came forward and put their kind of 2 cents in that actually this is how it's been done historically. The event's losing its character and tradition, and it's been going since 1957. And it's a lot of our members, their parents played in it, some of their grandparents would have done it, and it's really meaningful, and they wanted to go back to that. So that was a pretty easy win from that side of showing, yeah, and it aligns with our values. One of our values is about respecting the history of the club while looking to the future. So some things, sure, we change and do it more efficient. Other things, actually, there's a good reason why it's done like that.
Yeah. So I was creeping a bit on your LinkedIn, and I saw
Mm,
that you implemented the first Employee of the Month program
mm.
at Royal Auckland. Um, what was that like? And do you remember who the first winner was and why they stood out?
Yeah, absolutely. So something I've been thinking about for a while. I've got quite a long list of stuff I'd like to implement. So then it's a case of just picking out here and there ones to put in. So it's not just like here's 50 new things.
Yeah.
And that's one that had been on my list for a little while. And then we had an incident on the course where a member, well, actually his guest who was on our waiting list collapsed. And one of our golf operations team he grabbed it in a golf cart as soon as the radio message came in and went straight out there. Quite a young lad as well. And he got out there and guys, yeah, breathing but unconscious and already called the ambulance. And the members were like, oh, well, let's get him on the golf cart. Let's move him. Let's get him nearer to the entrance of the ambulance and can get him quicker. But they didn't know why he had collapsed. And although this guy's only like 21, he just said, no, that's not the correct first aid thing. We put him in the recovery position. We do not move him because we don't know what's wrong. And we wait for the ambulance. So to stand up to 3 people twice your age to say no, that's not the right thing. That was the kind of catalyst that went, okay, this really needs acknowledging. This is a perfect situation to really kick off this Employee of the Month with something that's took quite a lot of courage to follow through with and do. So that was our first one, and I think it was a pretty good one to start with. And each person gets a gift that's
It's a very high bar. Sorry, that's a real
oh
high
no,
bar to
yeah, that
start
was.
with.
I know, yeah. It's like follow that, everyone. This is the standard.
People be like choking out the members, trying to get them Heimlichs to compete. Just
Yeah, yeah. And what was cool because he was then moving to the agronomy team, and so the gift we got him was an engraved with his name, Leatherman, as a tool. So that's now, like, it was a really nice gift for him moving into that world, and something that's going to be really, every time he's going to look at that, it's going to be a reminder of why he got it, and that's kind of what you're striving for. So it's quite cool.
Yeah. Now has, because I was also seeing that you improved the net per, promoter score. Is that in correlation with the employee of the month? I'm sure it's probably part of it, but was there any, like, was that kind of correlated at all? Like, oh, when your people are saving members, that really has to help the numbers also.
Yeah, no deaths this year. So that last result was before we started the employee of the month. We've got our next survey going out in about 2 or 3 months. So it'd be interesting to see how that's kicked up again. A lot of that's just simple stuff. I don't think anything's really drastically changed. Just lots of small things improve all the time, and members do notice those things and comment on them. Whether it's something as simple as we have lots of refreshing cold towels for the summer months, which hadn't really been done before, but something that's really normal in Asia, that you come off the golf course, there's a wet cold towel which has got, whether it's lemon or lavender, whatever fragrance, and it's just really refreshing. Just those sort of small details that don't cost a lot to implement, doesn't take a lot, but they're the sort of things that have really improved the member satisfaction and engagement with the club.
Were there any, because you've done so many things for so many different clubs. Is there any, maybe one challenge that you've tackled or one thing that you've accomplished that you're, maybe most proud of or feel, most fulfilled about?
That is a very good question. Um, Probably a recent one that springs to mind would be, we had a front of house manager who got quite sick and had to step down, but we didn't know they're going to come back. So then we had someone come in. Their deputy stepped up as acting front of house manager and did the role for about 6 months, and then got fully promoted into the role permanently. And kind of in the last sort of almost a year now since I've done that, seeing from where they went, where they started, even based on things like their committee report, to where it is now, that growth. Someone who's, you can see their confidence growing, you can see the performance. That would be something that I think been really fulfilling, seeing how much they've progressed. And similar in past roles, people doing their PGA, maybe they've overseas PGA in a different language that's not their first language, and getting through that, and they're helping their career move on. I think that comes back to that coaching side of it that I kind of got into the industry with. Is that's what I enjoy. I enjoy seeing people develop, improve, and become better versions of themselves. That's where I get my most fulfillment beyond your traditional KPIs.
Yeah. Was coaching, because that you've mentioned it in different capacities, from the beginning, pretty much all throughout the episode. Has that always been a part of your life? And I can't remember if you mentioned it earlier, but like, did you have coaches in some capacity early on in like your childhood? Like, was that always there, or was this kind of more of a in your adult career and growth path?
Bit of both. So I probably have a slightly different educational childhood than most. I was homeschooled until I was like age 10 or 11. So were both my older sisters, something my parents were quite into. And that really developed a love of learning, because there's the maths and the English you just have to do, that's what the government says.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is a bit more, you can be much freer. So my parents' approach was, well, what do you want to learn about? What are you interested in? So I'd kind of get to choose the topic, then they would then facilitate the learning. So I think that from early on given me a passion for learning, which that I think is what comes across then in my coaching. Having my first coach in golf was someone who I'm still good friends with now. It's like 20 odd whatever years ago he coached me, and uh, him taking me on and improving me and seeing what I was capable of. I think you need those people. They've been really influential in my life, and I think having someone who can see what you're capable of and pushing you towards that, because I don't think any of us really know what we can do. It's much easier from the outside, people going, no, actually, you've got these skills that you don't know you have, because the things we're really good at, they're easy for us. So we don't really know that they're amazing skills because they're easy. and you need someone else to be able to go, no, actually, that thing you can do, that's amazing, and other people can't do that. You need to take that and grow it and go with it. And I think that's something which you need someone from the outside
Yeah.
who's also in a position themselves of success, where you can look at them and go, wow, if they think I can do it, then amazing. Our captain here, who was just finishing as captain, when they were going through the recruitment process to appoint the CEO role that I then got, because I was here as director of golf originally. Um, he's someone who had said that he thought I was capable of doing the role and stepping up into it. And he chairs the boards of some of the biggest companies in New Zealand. So I was like, well, if someone in that role who works with some of the best CEOs in the country thinks I'm capable of it, well, then I must be.
Yeah.
I think that side of things, and because it's happened to me, I find it kind of see it as my duty to better raise up people around me by making them aware of what their superpowers are that to them are just their normal skills.
Yeah. Do you have do you have a coach now yourself? Like, are you like, do you have, like, are you big into actual like coach? Like do you have a coach now?
I did. So for the first 6 months of taking on the CEO role, I took on an executive coach,
Mhm.
which really helped me through that initial transition of understanding the role, being able to set boundaries, not uh, not overworking, as it's really easy to do in this industry. Is you hire what you get, of be able to bring my best self every day by controlling how much I work. That was really useful, and there's someone that I'd probably go back to at some point
What
in the
were
future.
what were some of your takeaways from working with them?
Key things would have been taking the time to reflect, to actually sit back and look at where, what times a day am I best at doing different things, whether that's meetings, cracking on of work, um, how to how to set boundaries with a team of going, no, actually that's not my job, as much as you'd like to push that onto me. That's for you to go and figure out. Because what gets you through your career to a certain point is basically saying yes to everything. It certainly was for me anyway. Of being able to go, yeah, look at me, I can do all these different tasks. I get this all done. Aren't I an amazing show pony kind of thing? But that's, as you want to move up, you kind of need to do that. You need
Yeah.
to say yes to every volunteer opportunity to showcase your skills. But once you actually get into, say, the GM or CEO role, actually your number one objective is to say no to almost everything that doesn't fall onto a very, very small list of what your priorities are. And that's probably one thing I took from her, which really helped, was to lay out what are my priorities, what are my absolute critical things to get done for this long-term strategic plan of the club and for the betterment of the staff. And anything that doesn't fall inside of those, to either say no to, or just go, yeah, okay, when I've got an hour or whatever time that I just want something different to do, then I'll look at that, and the rest of it to say no to, which has been a challenge, but something I'm getting better at.
Yeah. Are there any, do you read about like coaching? Like, have you read like coaching books and like stuff is that part of your thing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say specifically coaching, but leadership books.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen to loads of podcasts, read a lot of books, and listen to audiobooks as well. And I think The Art of Possibility by Benjamin Zander. I think his wife Rosamund Zander,
The Art of
who he's
Possibility.
the Art of Possibility. Yeah, so he's the conductor for the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra,
Sorry,
and yeah,
I'm,
yeah,
I'm
you're
not doing
making
like a,
notes.
oh
That's
yeah, I'm not
okay.
doing a thing. I'm adding
That's
it
all
to
good.
I'm adding it to my Amazon. Actually, I think I
Yeah,
just got three more,
absolutely.
my monthly 3 Audible credits. So I think I might
Oh
just,
yeah, yeah. And the audio book is brilliant because he actually uses some music to portray some points and talk through what he's done, and it's about giving people a framework of possibility to lean into, rather than saying necessarily these are the standards you must do. Here's a framework of what you could become or what we could achieve. And I find it's a book that really energizes me and gives me a whole nother layer or level of enthusiasm every time I listen to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I've enjoy listening and reading about leadership books, but importantly, taking something to taking at least one thing and implementing it. There's no point listening and reading stuff if you just go, "Oh, that was nice," and you don't actually improve or do something from it. Even fiction books, I do like a lot of the best fiction books have amazing life lessons in them. Same as something like Ted Lasso has amazing leadership lessons in it. So does like Neil Gaiman's books. They have amazing stuff hidden in the storyline, and it's also nice just to actually take a bit of time and relax and enjoy listening to something. Not everything has to be about self improvement.
Yeah. That's one thing I'm trying to work on for 2025. It's hard for me sometimes to get into like more of a fiction, like more of like a storybook, because like my brain just keeps on wandering off. Um,
Yeah,
so
that's
it's
where audiobooks, a
yeah,
great fiction book read by the author. I mean, Neil Gaiman's is brilliant. It gets you absorbed in the story. I think I struggle a little bit more with fiction books when I read the physical book because I tend to just, unless I've put my phone in another room, just tend to get distracted. But if you're listening to an audiobook and it's riveting, then that's when I personally, I can really find I can just, yeah, switch off into it.
yeah. What's your favorite book that Neil has done?
I think the Graveyard book,
The Graveyard. Okay.
yeah, the Graveyard book, that's brilliant. It's a bit, the history behind it was, and I love this story. He had an idea for a book which he thought was going to be amazing, and he had it when he realized he wasn't a good enough writer to make the book as good as it could be yet. So he sat on it for like 20 years. Because the Graveyard book, if you think of the Jungle Book,
Yeah.
the Graveyard book, that's kind of how he got the idea. And everything is so vividly described because he's taken things from different places he's been around the world and gone, wow, that would be the perfect cemetery. That's the one I'm picturing for my book. And then another bit like that. And it's a really cool story. And for me, I found it just, yeah, you riveted into it, but it's a lot of leadership lessons in there still.
Oh, cool.
Mm.
I like that. Just wondering real quick. So out of all the places that you've lived, is there one worked at, has there been one that matches or one that you vibe with the best? Like, has there been one that it just clicked?
I think all of them have at the stage of my life I was in. So living in Dubai in
Mm,
my mid 20s. Fortunately, I had a partner, so in the sense that it's really easy to just get sucked into the crazy lifestyle of Dubai. But being in our mid to late 20s, being able to still just enjoy Dubai, you so many amazing restaurants and bars, beaches and activities, a lot of fun. Looking back on it now, it was a bit crazy. I think in terms of like just you work long days, but then you're going out for drinks. Then the weekend, or your days off, you're doing lots of stuff. I look at that now and go, I don't think I'd probably want to be doing that. So, but it was great at the time. Same with Hong Kong a little bit. Cool place, lots going on. In your late 20s, early 30s there, I think it's a great place to better go and do lots of exploring, frenetic kind of go, go, go lifestyle. With islands to go to and explore was cool. Whereas I think now, in just nearly touching 40, not quite yet, uh, having somewhere a little bit more laid back, but gives you still lots going on at work. But outside of that, it's a pretty laid back culture. Lots of outdoors activities to do. Love my cycling, so I can get out and do that as well, which I wasn't into in Dubai or Hong Kong, and really wouldn't be able to do much there anyway. So I think everyone's kind of matched where I've been in my life. Uh, love them all, just all very, very different. New Zealand's got amazing lifestyle, amazing outdoor activities. It's just a very long way away from everywhere else.
yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to add or touch on that we haven't talked about?
No, I don't think so. I think, yeah, like I said earlier, when it comes to different cultures and living in different countries, curiosity solves most problems. If things are done differently, doesn't mean they're done better or worse. They're just done differently, and trying to find out a bit about why is pretty interesting, and curiosity leads the way for that.
think that's going to be our episode title. Curiosity solves most problems. I
Cool.
like that. I like that a lot.
Nice.
I like that. Thank you so much for coming on. This was a great chat. This is a great chat and a wonderful conversation. Like, I don't think there was like one dull moment. This is amazing.
No, I appreciate it, Danny. It's really enjoyed talking to you, and thanks for having me on.
Hope you all enjoyed that episode. Ed, thank you once again so much for coming on the show. Absolutely fantastic. So many good nuggets. Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend, a colleague, someone you like, someone you don't like. Give it a rating and a review. Things like that help move the channel forward and cost absolutely nothing. That's this episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. I'm your host, Denny Corby. Catch y'all on the flippity flip.